Speciation is the formation of new species. Biologists define a species as organisms that can mate with each other and produce fertile offspring. New species form in two ways. Allopatric speciation is the most common. Allopatric speciation occurs when populations are isolated by a geographic barrier such as a mountain range, stream, or canyon. The forces of evolution then act differently in each population. Different environments may cause natural selection for different traits in the new populations. Random events, such as mutations or genetic drift, cause additional differences. If enough differences accumulate to prevent successful reproduction between the populations, they are considered new species. Sympatric speciation occurs without geographic isolation. For example, a mutation could result in polyploid zygotes with more than two sets of chromosomes. Because polyploid organisms have a different number of chromosomes, they cannot breed with the original organisms and would be new species. It is estimated that 40% of flowering plant species arose through polyploidy. Polyploidy is rare in animals because the extra set of chromosomes would most likely prevent development. Even if the animal survived, it would be a dead end without other animals of the new species to mate with. In plants, though, development is less rigidly controlled, and many plants can self-fertilize to reproduce. Reproductive isolating mechanisms prevent different species from breeding, maintaining separation after speciation. Prezygotic barriers prevent fertilization from taking place, so the zygote never forms. Postzygotic barriers prevent successful reproduction after fertilization. Ecological isolation occurs when mating is prevented because the organisms live in different places or habitats. For example, polar bears and grizzlies are so closely related that they can interbreed to form hybrid grizzly bears. The bears were ecologically isolated because polar bears lived further north and specialized in hunting on sea ice. However, as the climate changes, this ecological isolation is breaking down. Grizzlies are moving into polar bear habitat, and hybrids are becoming more common. Because grizzlies have a larger population and habitat, scientists fear they will out-reproduce polar bears, and we will lose polar bears as a separate species. Temporal isolation occurs when organisms reproduce at different times of the day or year. For example, daffodils bloom in the spring and goldenrod blooms in the fall. The pollen from one flower cannot fertilize the other flower because of this difference in blooming season. Behavioral isolation refers to actions that prevent mating. Many birds have precise mating rituals that must be followed to attract a mate. Boobies, albatross, and frigate birds all live on the Galapagos Islands, but have very different mating rituals. Blue-footed boobies display their feet to potential mates. Albatross spar with their beaks. Male frigate birds inflate their pouches and call loudly to attract females flying overhead. An albatross sparring with its beak would not be able to attract a booby as a mate. Mechanical isolation physically prevents mating. For example, some closely related insects have male reproductive organs that are shaped so differently that scientists can use them for identification of the species. This page from an old textbook is an example of this variety. A female whose reproductive organs fit with this male would have trouble mating with this male, or this male. Gamete isolation results from incompatibility between the egg and the sperm or pollen. Chemical differences in the membranes can prevent the combination of gametes to form zygotes. Hybrid inviability occurs after fertilization, when two different species mate, but their hybrid offspring is unable to survive. For example, goats and sheep can mate, but the zygote does not develop. Hybrid sterility occurs when the hybrid does survive, but is unable to reproduce. Horses and donkeys can mate to form mules, but mules are almost always sterile. There have been a few cases of mules giving birth, usually after mating with their own fathers. This is so rare that horses and donkeys are not going to become a single species. These reproductive isolating mechanisms keep species separate. As a final example, different species of firefly have different flashing patterns. Males respond to the unique flash of their species and fly only to their females to reproduce.